On our wedding night, my husband forced me to play a little game. Exchange secrets, exchange each other's deepest secrets. Zhou Ye half-truthfully said, I slept with your best friend before. I took the initiative. It was my turn, and I was silent for a moment. I have killed someone, do you believe it? Zhou Ye laughed hard. Dear, are you angry about what I just said? I was just teasing you. I just like the way you get jealous. Zhou Ye is a famous second-generation rich man. He is an expert in love affairs and has seen countless people. He is willing to marry a Cinderella like me who comes from an ordinary family. It has surprised everyone. Before entering into marriage, it is understandable to be unfaithful again. Zhou Ye urged with interest, in exchange, you also have to tell a secret. Must I? I touched my husband's handsome cheek awkwardly. Okay, but you can't regret it after listening. Of course. The smell of alcohol surged up, and the memories buried in the deepest part of my soul began to ferment. I stared at my husband. I killed someone, that night 15 years ago. As for the deceased, it's my biological father. My father was a good man before he became a gambler. He was an accountant in a state-owned factory. His life was not rich, but warm. Until the stock market crash in 2007. Everyone was crazy that year, and everyone was speculating in stocks. My dad was no exception. At first, he just used his spare money to play around, but he became more and more addicted. He thought the capital was too small, so he thought of the factory's payment for goods. He moved more and more. In order to settle the account, he was obsessed with loan sharks and borrowed 500,000 yuan to enter the market. He wanted to make money and put it back, without anyone knowing. Hearing this, Zhou Ye couldn't help but sneer, the leaks are always so credulous and naive. Yes, my dad always thinks he can turn the tide. He loses every time. The more he loses, the more he wants to win back. He lost his job, sold his house and car, but couldn't pay off his debts. He was beaten up by loan sharks and threatened to kill him. My mother had no choice but to lose face and ask relatives for money everywhere. She sold the house and homestead left by my grandmother to pay off his debts. We cried and my father vowed to turn over a new leaf. But he turned around and borrowed money from loan sharks again. How long will it take to pay back that much money? Dad was full of confidence. If I bet 100,000 yuan on a hand of cards, I can get it back in 3 or 4 rounds if I'm lucky. After Dad absconded, Mom took me to hide from place to place, but no matter where we moved, loan sharks could find us. My life quickly fell into a quagmire, and the more I struggled, the faster I fell. One day, Dad suddenly came to pick me up from school. After not seeing him for a few months, he said that he had found a new job and that we would be reunited soon. At that time, I was only in the first year of high school and lacked knowledge of human nature. I firmly believed that Dad had only temporarily gone astray and would definitely turn over a new leaf. I held Dad's hand and said a lot excitedly. I said that I got the first place in the class and was selected to participate in the mathematical Olympiad. Dad, I will work hard. I can get a student loan in college, and I don't need money from my family. He listened absent-mindedly, always alert to the movements around him, and handed me a bottle of Coke when I was thirsty. Dad was so careful that he even unscrewed it for me. But my hands kept shaking, so bubbles inevitably came out. I took it, not noticing the struggle that flashed across my father's eyes. Just like that, I drank the bottle with care. The Coke that changed my life. Your father. Did he put drugs in it? Zhou Ye's voice was tense, and he felt incredible. Is it strange? Gamblers will lose their humanity in the end, not to mention the illusory identity of father. After drinking the drink, I completely lost consciousness. When I woke up, I was sleeping on the bed of a high-end hotel. The room was filled with a strong and decadent perfume. My father was standing by with a pleasant face, saying that I had heat stroke and I should not study too hard in the future. I was in pain all over, and I didn't remember what happened at all. As long as I thought about it, I had a splitting headache, and only bizarre afterimages were left, and my memory was completely broken. I was very scared and left in a daze. Dad also kept telling me, "Your mother doesn't let me see you now. I have to hide it from her." You must believe that Dad will definitely turn things around. Let you go to the best school and study abroad. I am not stupid. Something must have happened. There are serious bruises on my lower body. Although my body was washed very clean, there are still blood inside. The school uniform had been changed, not my original one. With every step, a strange dull pain surged from the middle of my body. I was very scared and had to tell my mother everything. My mother immediately took me for a checkup. I was indeed violated, and not just by one person. It was many people. My world collapsed. I hid in my room and refused to eat, drink, or see anyone. I had thought about dying, but I was never willing to accept it. I was unwilling to accept that my father would treat me like this. My father loved me since I was a child. Others favored boys over girls, but he did not. He enrolled me in the most expensive cram school. Speaking of this, my eyes were wet and my voice was unconsciously soft. The factory director's daughter learned piano. My father saw that I was envious, so he went out to deliver water and resell second-hand electrical appliances, and bought me a brand new piano. When I was a child, I had to walk a muddy path from the factory to the employee dormitory. My father saw that I was reluctant to let my new leather shoes get muddy, so he lifted me up with all his strength and let me ride on his neck. "Princess, please sit down, and let's go back to the palace." My father smiled. The view suddenly became so wide, I opened my hands and laughed. The sunset was in the distance, and the wind happily passed by my father and me. I will always remember the way my father held me up. Such a father. Would he send me to a strange man's bed? Dad finally found us. He knelt in front of me and begged me, "Daughter, do you want to see Dad being hacked to death? Dad really has no choice. How can Dad pay back millions of dollars? Now they are lenient and say that as long as you work outside for 5 years, Dad's debt can be written off. It's only 5 years. It's so strange, the world is so strange and absurd." Dad burst into tears and kept knocking his head to me, "It's just 5 years. If you take more medicine, you won't get pregnant. And then, please save Dad." 8. My mother came home from get off work and saw the scene. She rushed over with a broken heart. "You are not a human. Get out of here." The two of them fought in a ball. My father grabbed my mother's neck and his eyes were wide open with fear. "What can I do? You don't know how cruel their methods are. I have seen them do it with my own eyes. They really cut people's hands and cut off their organs." My mother struggled desperately with her hands, like a drowning person, and her throat was hissing and spitting out heavy air, but my father still had no intention of stopping. He used so much force that his veins were exposed. At this moment, bang, Dad looked back in disbelief. It was me. I held up a trophy. I smashed it down on the back of my dad's head with all my strength. The Provincial Mathematical Olympiad Champion Cup is heavy-duty and can kill people. My mind was empty at that moment, blank, completely blank. Dad waved his hands to grab it, and Mom panicked and strangled his neck with a piece of wire. She tried her best to tighten it, and my dad's eyeballs popped out. I took this opportunity to muster up my strength and hit it again. Dad collapsed on the ground and didn't move. After a long time, my mother trembled and reached out to sniff. No air. We conspired to kill Dad. Protecting me is my mother's most instinctive reaction. What's wrong with her wanting to protect me? I don't want to be sold again. What's wrong? But once we call the police, we are always on the wrong side. Carrying the crime of murder for life. My future, my innocence, my life will be ruined. We were shocked and scared, not knowing what to do next. Mom carefully poked her head out, and the whole alley was quiet except for the moonlight. There was someone at the entrance of the alley. It was an old woman who ran a convenience store, named Zhou Ye. But fortunately, she was blind. We put Dad into a red, white and blue bag and dragged him slowly past, one after the other. Suddenly, Mrs. Zhang asked, "Where is Anrui's mom going so late?" The old woman sat hunched in the dark, her cloudy, white eyes, as if without pupils, looking over. My mom was startled, her hands loosened, and the body bag fell to the ground. My mom's voice was so tense that it was almost angular. "Nothing, go take out some trash." The old woman looked over with a blank expression. "But your trash is too big and too fresh, so this won't work." I was stunned. It turned out that Zhangpe was born with abnormal eyesight, but she was not really blind. She just used her blindness to cheat multiple subsidies. Cold sweat crawled all over my back, and fear completely took over my soul. I almost couldn't breathe. What should I do? Will she call the police? Or blackmail? But I have no money, what can I give? The old woman turned her cloudy eyes to me. "I can help you, if you are willing to trust me." At this point in the story, I felt thirsty. Zhou Ye listened attentively and urged me to continue. He was obviously deeply attracted by the story. I was not in a hurry, but asked, "If it were you, what would you do?" He thought for a moment. "I would agree. Anyway, it's like this. It's better to risk your life." In 2005, cameras were far less popular than now. There is still a possibility of escape. However, can an old lady have this ability? I seemed not satisfied with this answer. In fact, there is not only one choice. I laughed softly with half of my face in the shadow. "We have two people here. Zhangpe is just a blind old woman with no relatives, so we also have the choice of killing to silence the witness." Seeing me like this, Zhou Ye's face changed. I grabbed his hand, the palm was wet and cold, I covered it with heartache. Kill her, this thought did come to me. My mind was very confused at that time. For such a brief moment, I felt like I became my father, and I could only gamble everything. When there is no other way, people's gambling nature will completely explode. In the face of survival, we can all become the craziest gamblers. In the end, I chose to believe her. Zhangpe asked us to drag the body to her kitchen, and we did it. She first asked my mother what she was going to do. My mother used to love watching TV, and her common sense of crime only stayed at the destruction of corpses in criminal investigation dramas. Throw it away. Throw it away? Throw it into the sea? The garbage dump? Her nonsense caused Zhangpe to sneer. "What nonsense are you talking about? Where is the car? What do you use to throw it? Take a taxi? Take the bus? What kind of package do you use? Bag or suitcase? Do you have one at home?" My mother shook her head in frustration. Zhangpe's questions were realistic and sharp, and she was simply unable to resist. "If you take a taxi at this time, people will definitely remember you. You don't even have basic tools, how can you throw it? The nearest bay is 130 kilometers away. Besides, the liver temperature of a person can measure the time of death. Once the source is traced, you can't escape. What should we do?" When we were at a loss, Zhangpe said something dimly. "It's not difficult to do. The body is gone. So naturally, it can't be measured." From that day on, the old lady stopped selling fried meat patties. Instead, she started selling braised food. My mother worked as a maid, and Zhangpe gave instructions. When the neighbors were curious, she said cheerfully, "I can't let my good skills be lost. And Rui's mother is capable and hardworking. Let's make a fortune together." Indeed, Zhangpe is very good at braising. She said that the meat should be sweet and not heavy and clogging. The difference lies in controlling the heat and skimming the oil. If the fire is too big, the meat will be dry and the bottom will be dry. If the fire is too small, the sweet taste will not reach the meat. Before dawn, my mother rode a tricycle to bring back 30 kilograms of frozen meat from the wholesale market. There were pig heads, pig feet, pig intestines, chicken hearts, duck hearts, and more than a dozen other parts. My mother was so nervous that she kept rubbing her hands. "Will it be eaten?" Mrs. Zhang immediately glared at her. "Who doesn't use frozen meat? Just add more ingredients, who can eat it?" By the way, you can't be lazy when washing the pig's head. There are a lot of ear and nose hairs inside, so you have to wash all the dirt clean. It can be said that my mother didn't sleep during those days and didn't dare to leave the braising pot for a moment. The effort paid off. After opening the pot, the overbearing meat fragrance instantly filled the whole room. My mother couldn't help but take a deep breath. It smells so good. Not only is it fragrant, we gave a lot. People living nearby are not well off, so Mrs. Zhang asked my mother to bake the steamed buns and chop the braised meat into pieces and stuff them into the buns. The buns are crispy and the meat is sweet. How can the business be bad? Even the loan sharks came, they ate a lot. After my father disappeared, they were the most anxious. On my way home from school that day, I was stopped by several vicious loan sharks. Tell me, where is your father? The knife was on my neck, but I didn't say a word. The leader grabbed my hair fiercely. Don't pretend, you can fool others, but not me. I know he came to look for you the night he disappeared. I was beaten to death, but I still insisted that I knew nothing. What are you doing? Stop it. The police, attracted by the sound of the fight, confiscated the loan shark. The gangster was still arrogant at first. It is only natural to pay back debts. Her father owes money, so she has to pay it back. The arresting officer Tang warned sternly, it is only natural? Let me tell you, debts incurred from gambling are illegal debts. The law does not support creditors to collect debts. You are illegally collecting debts. You have seriously violated the law. If I find out that you harass Zhou Ye again, it will not be as simple as 7 days of confinement. The bet was right, I sobbed on my face, and I was relieved in my heart. Officer Tang is indeed an upright person. It is worth it for me to take this detour these days. Officer Tang glanced at my bare rental house. When his eyes fell on my mathematical Olympiad trophy, my breath stopped. A corner of the trophy was slightly damaged by the skull. It's okay, I kept reminding myself. It's been a month since my dad disappeared. It's normal for gamblers to abandon their wives and children and disappear and die. Even if we take them for testing, there will be no results. In the end, he just patted my shoulder sympathetically. My daughter is in the same class with you. She mentioned your matter. And Zhou Ye, you must not give up your studies. You and your father are independent civil subjects. You have no obligation to pay for his gambling debts. If they come to harass you again, just call me directly. With the help of my teacher, I have been living on campus, and loan sharks have never bothered me again. I passed the college entrance examination smoothly. On the day I left, I asked Zhangpe, why are you willing to help me like this? What's the matter with willingness? I'm happy. The old woman looked at the wall silently. I looked over there and saw 2 tablets there, which belonged to her daughter. I realized it later and remembered a piece of gossip. Zhangpe had a miserable life. She lost her husband at an early age. The daughter she raised with great difficulty met the wrong man. She was beaten by the man and jumped off the building when she was 8 months pregnant. Not long after, the man also mysteriously disappeared. Perhaps her son-in-law did not flee for fear of crime but was here. That's great, I thought while wiping the stew pot. Then my dad won't be alone. After that, I went to Beijing to study, got a government scholarship to go abroad, worked, met you, and you know everything after that. This is my secret. In the romantic wedding room, Zhou Ye's expression became strange. He just stared at me with a look of suspicion in his eyes. My love with Zhou Ye can be called a drama. We met at the ski resort and encountered a cable car accident. Zhou Ye has claustrophobia, so I had to support him and walk to find rescue. Just now, Zhou Ye mentioned the scene of his first visit to my house in his wedding speech. Once I flew back to China for more than 10 hours, and Zhou Ye took me home and made me a bowl of hot noodles. I used to be unstable and woke up in different hotels every day. My life was floating in the clouds. At this moment, seeing her busy in the kitchen, I felt a sense of security that I had never felt before. There are too many people who have something to do with me. I can tell them at a glance, but Anan, I know that you are after me. I covered my face with tears in my eyes. The sweet words were still ringing in my ears, but within 2 hours, Zhou Ye subconsciously avoided my kiss. The charming atmosphere of the newlyweds was gone. I was about to explain, when the servant knocked on the door to remind me, "Madam, guests from your hometown are here." Seeing me go out to greet the guests, Zhou Ye glanced at me with lingering fear, but only a glance. He froze in place. In the living room, the old woman who came in exhausted had a pair of white blind eyes. At this moment, the boundary between the story and reality blurred. The characters who should have been in the story appeared in front of him alive. Why? Are all the murder stories true? A chill rose from Zhou Ye's spine. Zhou Ye felt that he had fallen into a carefully woven trap. The bowl of braised noodles that conquered his taste buds was made by his girlfriend. She quickly used chopsticks to pick out a piece of meat that was braised to a dark red and black color from the old red brine jar. She chopped it up while it was hot and served it with green onions. It was so fragrant that it made his mouth water. "Baby, your cooking skills are better than our 5-star chefs." He would eat up the soup every time, and his girlfriend smiled meaningfully. "Really? The marinade left by my mother has an exclusive secret recipe that has been accumulated for many years. It is of course different from the outside. Years of braised flavors." Zhou Ye felt dizzy, and his stomach was cramping. He felt nauseous. He couldn't accept that the person next to him was the murderer. Even if he was forced to do so, it wouldn't work. Zhou Ye immediately called the female secretary, furious. "Check in Rue's family situation 15 years ago. Especially her father's, hurry." In the living room, I was chatting with Zhangpe. She sat on the sofa stiffly. "The village is flooded, the road to the train station is blocked again, and your big wedding time is delayed." Zhou Ye has always disliked dealing with relatives from my hometown, but today he was out of character and asked questions. When he passed Zhangpe, the teacup in his hand fell. Otherwise, I was quick and the cup of hot water would have spilled on the old woman. He kept testing the old woman. "Zhangpe, you really can't see at all?" The old woman who knew nothing said yes. "Cataract, almost can't see, this time thanks to my nephew to send me to the city, and Rue wants me to go to the city for surgery. Oh, at my age, don't waste this money." Seeing Zhou Ye's nervous look, I couldn't help laughing, and sent Zhangpe away. I hugged his waist from behind and smiled meaningfully. "Honey, you didn't really believe that story, did you? Is it a story, or your secret?" Zhou Ye's breathing became rapid. I leaned against his back and felt the slight tremor on my back. "Mrs. Zhang is my mother's aunt. Her image was used in the story just now. This technique is very common in stories. If it is really her, the age will not match after 15 years. At this time, his secretary sent an investigation message. I quickly took his phone away, regardless of Zhou Ye's attempt. I read the content of the text message aloud. "Mr. Zhou, your wife's parents are still alive. They were the director of the state-owned cotton mill 15 years ago. Didn't they come when you got engaged? Do you remember? And Rue, give me back your phone." Seeing Zhou Ye's face livid and furious, I was overjoyed. "Dear, this story is based on a true story in my father's factory. The name is Desire. It reminds you that if a man can't control his desire, he will sooner or later set himself on fire. Don't you think so?" Zhou Ye finally realized that I was angry. "It's just that I'm different from other women. The angrier I get, the happier I laugh." "Zhou Ye, you seduced my best friend on our wedding night, and I can't be angry? When you came back, you smelled of someone else's perfume." The truth often comes out in the form of a joke. Jiang Sisi is my best friend. She is a model with attractive long legs. Zhou Ye has been interested in her for a long time. Of course, he said that it was all in the past. Just this time, there won't be a next time, I promise you. To show his determination, Zhou Ye opened WeChat in front of me and deleted all the other parties' contact information. And then, at this moment, "I only love you." Zhou Ye pinched my chin and wanted to kiss me. In front of the beauty, he felt hot all over. He wanted to stand up, but his knees softened. He felt like he was exhausted and collapsed on the bed, gasping for breath. Wait, what am I doing? Why can't I use strength and my heartbeat is so fast? I comforted softly. It's okay, these are all normal signs after poisoning. Zhou Ye suddenly opened his eyes wide. Although this poison is deadly, it takes a long time to take effect. I chose to use the story to numb his emotions, because I was afraid that he would notice it. When people's attention is distracted, they will naturally ignore the abnormalities in their bodies. A successful story can definitely mobilize the reader's emotions. You will attribute the heartbeat, sweating, and body trembling to the story and alcohol, but not to poisoning. I was very satisfied. It seems that my story is very successful. Why? What do you want to do? Zhou Ye's eyes were full of fear, his body twitched violently, his teeth chattered, he struggled to climb out of bed, and I held him down tightly with a hug. You should have been alert from the beginning of the story. 15 years ago, Ruheo Hotel, don't you remember? Among the rich kids who abused me, there was Zhou Ye. I gave you a chance to escape. It takes time for the poison to take effect. If you feel guilty about us, you will definitely be alert and save yourself. Unfortunately, you are unaware of it. You have forgotten everything about the victims. In your eyes, we are just leaks and tools. The memories that I tried my best to forget are not worth mentioning to Zhou Ye. After all, the Zhou family is the owner of the largest casino hotel in the area. 15 years ago, Zhou Ye was sent by his father to study management while he was still on summer vacation. Knowing that some VVIP customers like fresh female students, he immediately ordered his subordinates, then go find them. They must be beautiful and pure. By the way, aren't there so many debtors? Don't they have daughters? Open your mind. If a girl works for 3 days, you can reduce the interest for 1 day. Is that enough? Leaks are useless if their roots rot, but they still have the next generation. The past is too painful to look back on, but I was already in the abyss. Can't remember? Let me help you recall. It was Thursday, the sky was blue, you were having a pajama party in the top floor suite, and when we were sent in, rock music was playing inside. You opened the door and asked why we were so slow, and then the 4 of us girls were sent in. And then, I was wrong, I love you. Zhou Ye's throat was almost unable to make a sound, he begged me humbly, I was young at that time. I didn't know anything, I did something wrong, give me a chance, I will make it up to you. You are young? What about me? I lowered my head. You always say that I'm not after your money, but you are right about that. From the beginning to the end, I was after his life. Zhou Ye is always accompanied by bodyguards, and he is very vigilant. It is difficult to approach him, and it is even more difficult to get away unscathed. Over the years, I have been studying him. I analyzed his living habits and psychological defects, and I took the right medicine from the point that he lost his mother when he was young and was suspicious, and I conquered them one by one. I created the accident to make him rely on me. I am not materialistic and have no interest in money and jewelry, so he can trust me. I took the initiative to propose a prenuptial agreement to prove that I had no other intentions. Zhou Ye raised his face in pain. The bedroom was on the 2nd floor of the villa, and the maids and bodyguards were on the 1st floor. He tried desperately to call for help, but his throat could only spit out hissing sounds. Every minute, every second, was so long. The sound of struggle gradually weakened, just like the suffering in life, there is always a moment of calm. When only my breathing sound was left in the room, I looked at the mirror, and my cold and smiling face was reflected on it. The man in my arms had his eyes wide open and his head tilted softly to one side. He died with his eyes open, just as I wanted. In an instant, tears burst out of my eyes, and I ran out of the door in disheveled clothes. Help, come quickly, my husband is in trouble. The rich boy died suddenly on his wedding night. This incident caused a great uproar, and there were many different opinions at the time. There were all kinds of weird rumors. Some said that he died suddenly while playing multiplayer games, hired a killer to kill someone, and even involved Thai witchcraft. The police quickly concluded that this was not an ordinary accident. There were no external injuries on the body of the deceased, but drug residues were found in the body. Zhou Ye died of murder. Was it revenge? There are professional security guards in the villa, and there are no signs of intrusion by outsiders, so this possibility can basically be ruled out. Since it is not an outsider, it must be an insider. As a wife, I was the first to be suspected. In the interrogation room, the police asked me sternly. Didn't you notice anything unusual about him during the hour you were alone together? The tone was very harsh, and it was obvious that he wanted to put pressure on me. I looked numb and my eyes were swollen like walnuts. There were many guests at our wedding, and Zhou Ye drank a lot of wine. So did I. I was dizzy and couldn't tell. Zhou Ye is a well-known playboy. He has had relationships with many women. His ex-girlfriend also came to the wedding? Suspecting a murder of passion, I cried and was heartbroken. Yes, it was me who made the invitation, officer. I know my husband's past better than anyone else. If I can't even bear this, how can I be the daughter-in-law of the Zhou family? Besides, we signed a prenuptial agreement. What can I get if my husband dies? Even the insurance beneficiary is written in my mother-in-law's name. The report came out, and Zhou Ye was poisoned by a chronic poison. It doesn't work immediately. It takes at least 3 hours to take effect. When the victim was poisoned and Zhou Ye was changing her wedding dress in the dressing room. There were witnesses all the time, so she didn't have time to commit the crime. The Zhou family's business is not clean. It seems that they are going to start with revenge killing. Without the conditions and motives to commit the crime, my suspicion was quickly eliminated. When I left the interrogation room, an acquaintance came towards me. I nodded haggardly to show my goodwill. When I closed the door, I heard the young police gossip. Captain Tang, do you know each other? Captain Tang looked at my back and was a little stunned. Well, I know each other. 15 years ago, her father ran away due to gambling debts, and her mother abandoned her. I helped her drive away the loan shark. She is a very motivated girl, but unfortunately, her life is not very good. My fate is indeed bad. In the story I told, my mother loves me very much. She never left me, she took me to transfer schools, worked late at night for me, and knew that I would fight with my father if I was bullied. In the dark and rat-infested rental house, we depended on each other. How I wish I could have such a mother who would share my hardships. Unfortunately, after my father was in debt, my mother decisively divorced. She had long been tired of my father's incompetence, gave up the right to custody, and ran away with her lover. At the station, I knelt down and begged my mother to take me away. She pried open my fingers and was unmoved, and your father needs you, and your mother can't selfishly take you away. Your Uncle Chen is not easy either. Let's do this. If you have any problems, call this number, and your mother will try her best to find a way. After being bullied, I used the only money I had to make a long-distance call for help. A desperate mechanical female voice came from the other end. The user you dialed is an empty number. My mother lied to me, it was an empty number. Mom, I'm in so much pain, so much pain. I lay disheveled in the damp and cold shabby house, staring blankly at the wall above my head. The white wall was dirty, and layers of mold were corroding me. Someone come and save me. In the story, I really wanted to be better to my past self, so I had a mother who depended on me for life, and Zhangpa who drew her sword to help when she saw injustice. Since the characters are fictional, then, did that cruel knight really exist? Where is my father? The police investigation was once again in trouble. They suspected that the murderer had poisoned the guests during the toasting session, but that day, there were 700 or 800 guests and hotel staff, and it was extremely difficult to find clues. As the investigation deepened, the police had an unexpected gain. Zhou Ye's safe contained many explosive videos, many of the protagonists in them were celebrities and politicians. Zhou Ye was keen on holding illegal gatherings, and he also used these videos as a threat. Public opinion was in an uproar. My favorite idol is a frequent partygoer. Shouldn't he die? He died well. Who did this? I bow down to him. Isn't the Zhou family keen on charity? They also sponsored many girls' schools. They are beasts in human form. It's terrifying to think about it. I am one of the victims. They said they would introduce me to resources at the party. I drank something and lost consciousness. When I woke up, I was surrounded by strange men. They threatened me and said they would report the video to my school if I called the police. There are many cases like mine. Me too. I chose to remain silent because I was afraid, but silence is useless. Covering the scar will only make it more painful. I am willing to testify in court. I have evidence. There are more and more victims, and more people are brave enough to stand up and testify. The public opinion storm caused by the video has caused Zhou's stock price to plummet. Many people have been arrested and will face multiple felony charges. Zhou Ye's death was covered up by overwhelming abuse and new investigations. But how was the poison administered? Zhou Ye probably never thought of this question until his death. The truth lies at the very beginning of the story. On the wedding bed, Zhou Ye, who was drunk, said half-truthfully, "I seduced your bestie, I took the initiative," in the fitting room. In the corridor, another group of guests came in to record their statements. Jiang Cece and I met each other's eyes in midair, and then naturally staggered away. The so-called tacit understanding means that everything can be said without words. Yes, poison. It was on her skin. 15 years ago, I was not the only girl who was insulted. Among them, there was the female secretary who helped cover my identity, and Jiang Cece. Through brief skin contact, the poison entered Zhou Ye's body, and then I took over. In this way, we can each have an alibi. The hotel is usually managed by Zhou Ye, and he is not stupid enough to go to a place with surveillance. Thank him very much for providing us, the most perfect place to commit the crime. Jiang Cece and I met in a hotel. After calling the police to no avail, I tried to enter the hotel to take photos of evidence. After being discovered by the bodyguard, it was Jiang Cece who dragged me into the cleaning room to escape. Are you crazy? If you dare to send the evidence to the police, you will die tonight. Her father was set up to owe a huge gambling debt, and his organs were finally hollowed out and thrown on the street. We were in the same boat and soon became friends who could talk about anything. That night, my father wanted me to sell it, but I refused. I mustered up the courage to refuse. The police said that we are independent individuals, and I have no responsibility to pay your gambling debts for you. My father was very angry and grabbed my neck with both hands. I gave birth to you and raised you, and you are talking about independence? Without me, you can grow so big? Even if you give me this life, it is your duty. Before I fainted, a figure rushed over from behind. Jiang Cece, who came, raised my trophy and smashed it down. My dad screamed and let go of my hand. His head was covered in blood. The pain made him lose his mind. He picked up the trophy and smashed it hard against Cece. In desperation, I pulled a piece of wire from the ground and tightly wrapped it around his neck. I gritted my teeth and pulled back with all my strength in this life. Every time the power struggled, I could clearly hear my heart beating hard. When I was a child, my father was very strong. He could lift me up high, let me be higher than the reeds, and reach out to touch the sky. The wire in my hand was getting tighter and tighter, and tears blurred everything. 6 past, future, present. Ah. After the short humming sound came to an abrupt end, everything was silent. Dad finally died. The golden Olympiad trophy was covered with blood and rolled beside the body. Jiang Cece and I were both gasping for breath, gasping for our lives. No one spoke for a while. We can't call the police. Jiang Cece covered her bloody head, otherwise, your next life will be ruined. We have to deal with the scene first. Deal with it? That's easy for you to say. Taking a taxi at this time will definitely make people remember it. We don't even have basic tools. How can we throw it? The nearest bay is 130 kilometers away. My body was shaking, my teeth were clenched, and I tried my best not to let tears flow. Besides, a person's liver temperature can measure the time of death. Once we trace the source, we can't escape. What should we do? Why is fate so cruel to us? There are prisons everywhere. We have no way out. I took out a bottle of pesticide hidden under the bed. It was the last way out I prepared for myself. I laughed miserably with a hoarse voice. Go quickly, I did it all by myself. If I die, everything will be over. No, no. But Cece refused. In the dark, she hugged me tightly, fearing that I would do something stupid. She said that people who committed suicide cannot be reincarnated. In the next life, I will have to suffer. There must be a way, there must be. At the end of the night, she suddenly raised her head and proposed a possibility. You said, if the body is gone, then nothing can be detected, right? Before Cece's father started gambling, he ran a braised food shop. Her backyard was fully equipped with pots and pans. She had been a maid since she was a child and was good at making braised food. The smell of the brine filled with star anise and meaty smell permeated every pore of my body. The smell was so strong that even mosquitoes didn't want to bite me. No one in the kitchen said anything extra. We just worked without saying a word. Of course, Cece would occasionally remind me. The fire is too big, it will burn, we have to take it slow. Okay, it doesn't matter if it's frozen meat, the smell will be worse, the key is to wash it clean. I know. Across the smoke, we looked at each other, sweat hung on our faces, crystal clear, swaying. Like tears, they just refused to fall. I like to tell stories, and life is a story. There are ups and downs, lows, highs, and naturally there will be an ending. When Zhou Ye deleted all the records of Jiang Cece in front of me, I knew this story. Finally, I can start writing the ending. This is what we have been waiting for 15 years, The real ending. The end.